Jungkook stood by the window, looking at the city lights, immersed in his thoughts, as he heard a slight terror of voice from the adjacent room, the room of his wife Wine. They sleep in different rooms because that's what they decided on the wedding night, as their marriage has been arranged by their parents, and now it's been a week, but it's still the same. Jungkook ignored the noise and kept thinking about his business. But he heard another whimper from Vine's room, and it looked like she was in pain. He looked towards the door with confusing expressions, when another whimper broke his focus from thinking. He immediately made his way to the other room, pushing the door open just enough to see her, tangled in the sheets, her face filled with fear and her eyes closed. She was having a nightmare. Before he realized what he was doing, he was at her bedside, resting his knees on the ground as he whispered, "Wine?" Wine moved vigorously faster, and her breathing got heavier too. Jungkook shook her from her arms. "Wine, wake up. You're having a bad dream." When he shook her, Wine suddenly opened her eyes and hugged Jungkook beside her as tight as she could. Her fingers clutched the back of his shirt and her forehead sweaty. Jungkook was taken aback. His heart skipped a beat. He could feel her fingers trembling on his back and her heartbeat that was so loud. Jungkook let her. Although it was the first time he was letting someone hug him, he let her do that. In fact, he hugged her back, pulling her closer as he patted her hair. "You okay, Vine?" She gasped, her breath hitching in her throat and her face in his chest. She clung to him as if he were a lifeline, her small frame trembling against his. Upon hearing Jungkook's voice, Vine managed to look up. Jungkook's face right in front of her eyes made her eyes widen when she realized she was in his embrace. "I'm here," he said softly, which was a shock for Vine. Vine's breathing gradually slowed, her grip on him loosening slightly. She looked up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. "Vine, I'm sorry, I had a bad dream," she whispered with her shaky voice as she tried to move away from him. She tried to move away from him because she knew he doesn't like being touched. Most of the people he meets are his enemies, so he doesn't let anyone get close to him. As she moved back, Jungkook held her tighter and picked her up in bridal style. Vine's eyes widened as Jungkook sat on the bed, making her sit on his lap, holding her close to him. He brushed a strand of hair away from her face, his touch sending shivers in her spine and blushes on her cheeks. It immediately made her forget about her dream. "Jungkook, I know. You're safe now." "Fine. Why did you come in? I didn't mean to wake you." "Jungkook, don't worry, I wasn't sleeping." "Fine. Do you have insomnia? I hardly ever saw you sleeping. You're mostly thinking while moving here and there." "Jungkook, I don't have insomnia. I just have to think about certain things." Jungkook, who doesn't tell anyone about his life or his problems, told everything she asked, without hesitation. Somehow, he felt comfortable around her. "Vine, what do you think about that much?" "Jungkook, everything and nothing, mostly business." Vine looked down, realizing that if anything means to him, it's his business, and he's always thinking about it. He never felt any warmth, the happiness that she wants him that she wants to give him. Vine looked down and asked in a low tone, "Doesn't it ever get lonely?" Jungkook showed a weak smile, his heart being twisted at the question. Loneliness is part of the job. Vine heard the loneliness in his voice and felt it with her heart. She turned back to look at his face as she said, "You don't have to be alone." Jungkook looked back at her. "I'm used to it now." "Fine, but you don't have to be." "Maybe not, but it's easier this way." Vine turned around, defeated. She looked ahead because she didn't want to hear his answer on her face this time. When she asked, "Vine, do you regret marrying me?" "No, not even for a second." The reply came faster than she even asked the question, her heart skipping a beat at his reply. "Jungkook, do you regret it?" Vine took a few seconds and smiled. "No, because of the moments like this." Jungkook's eyes narrowed. "Moments like this?" Vine held his hand that was on her waist. "When you show you care, even if you don't say it." Jungkook in return smiled, and there was a long silence between them as they continued to sit in their current position. Vine then finally broke the silence. "Do you ever get scared?" Jungkook. "Sometimes, not for myself, but for those I care about." "Like me?" Vine asked without realizing. Jungkook. "Yes, like you." The reply made her stomach feel butterflies. Her heart ached for him. She, without thinking, turned back and hugged him, resting her head on his chest. Jungkook huffed for a second because of her sudden gesture, but then he quickly and gently wrapped her arms around her. "Jungkook, do you want to sleep together tonight?" "Hmm," Vine said immediately, making Jungkook hooked. "Jungkook, I didn't know you would agree so easily." "You not." Vine broke the hug and cut him off. "How am I the one being naughty? You yourself asked me first." Jungkook. "Well, because that's what I ever wanted." Vine scoffed. "Then why did you say the opposite on the wedding night?" Jungkook was surprised as he pushed her away. "I didn't even say anything on the wedding night. You're the one who suggested it." Vine. "I..." She slapped his arm and said, "I said it because I thought you would want the same." Jungkook leaned in, moving her lips to her neck. "How dare you make negative assumptions about me?" His lips licked her neck, but then Vine pulled away, pinching his chest. "Vine, leave me. I'm not talking to you." She said, trying to move away from him, but he tightened his grip against her waist and pulled her closer. "Where are you going? You're finally in my hands," he said, and licked her neck once again, making her laugh, as she punched his chest once again. "Fine. Leave me." He tucked his face in her neck and continued kissing it. "Jungkook, not a chance tonight."